Well, it's coming up to the end of 2024. The word has gone out amongst all the YouTubers that it is time to do our end of year wrap ups. Who am I to ignore that call? So here we are. I'm going to hopefully do a couple of these over the next few days. We're going to start with my take on the five-ish best watches of 2024. Hi, I'm Pete McConville and welcome to my channel. Here I like to overthink, overanalyze and just geek out on watches far more than a grown man should. I lied a little bit on the intro. I'm not going to even try and assess the best five watches of the year. I don't even know how you would pick the best five. These are my favorite five, and that is how I'm picking these ones. You, of course, have every right to be wrong and to disagree with me. No, of course, we're all going to have different takes on what's the best and what's the worst, depending on what works for us, or doesn't, as the case may be. But anyway, these are my five-ish best watches of 2024. I'm going to start with the CHAEK Prominade, and my personal favorite is the ivory guilloche version, not the more splashy and more popular drop of water that a lot of other people are going to drag out. I personally like the more simple, more understated ivory guilloche. What is it about this watch that gets me draws me in? For me, this watch is about a perfectly timed call of enough. The watch is deceptively simple from afar, but as you get closer, you see more and more detail, more and more complexity. But the designers had a good sense of when to stop. At what point would more complexity either be wasted or potentially detract from the overall vision? The movement has a similar vibe. It is modern enough to be interesting and set itself aside from the pack, but traditional and backwards looking enough to remain familiar and approachable. And overall, the finishing is spectacular, but only to a point. It's as though they got to this position and asked themselves, could we do more, but to what end? And it decided to just stop at exactly the right time. So for me, the Promenade balances on this knife's edge of not enough and just a little bit too much. And that balance, like watching someone walk a tightrope, is beautiful. And I love this watch. I opened this up by saying five-ish best watches because in a couple of these, there's a close run alternative. And this first one is such a case. The CHAEK Prominade, the ivory guilloche, is my favorite, but it's run a close second by the CHAEK Fratello collab, the Promenade Transparencies in the Viridian Green. Overall, I find them both really attractive. With the collab with Fratello, I think some of the balance is lost. However, the look is so arresting that it is still a very compelling option, and I keep coming back to it. Why did I go for the ivory as opposed to the Viridian Green? Ultimately, what it comes down to for me is that almost a year after the release of the original Promenade in ivory, I keep coming back to this watch unprompted, checking to see if there's any available, checking to see if there's any on the secondary market, checking to see if there's a potential discount around somewhere. I suspect there won't be, but you know what? We live in hope. Having said that, for the Viridian Green, it's more of an effort to remind myself that that watch is out there. Whereas the Promenade returns unprompted, the Viridian, I have to think about a bit more. And for that reason, I choose the original over the Fratello collab. Okay, so my second watch on this list is the JBL Polaris Geographic. Why? Ultimately, it comes down to if someone went through and looked at my videos, looked at my preferences, looked at my collection, and then said, let's design a watch for Pete, it would probably be the JLC Polaris Geographic. I love JLC. I am always ready for a new tryst with that brand. I love a travel complication. That's the equivalent of getting me liquored up to take advantage of me in the night. I already love the Polaris. I've got the Polaris in the simple diver in green. Love the case, love the internal bezel. The movement is gorgeous. That lacquer dial with the double degradé finishing is brilliant. The Arabic markers, it's just all in all, just a winner watch. So combine all of that, a brand I love, a complication I love, a watch that's brilliant. The only thing holding me back is the little matter of not having 29,500 Australian dollars, sorry, 25,900 Australian dollars sitting in a bank account ready to go. If it wasn't for that little matter, this watch would be, I would have ordered this watch already. Okay, number 3 on this list is the Audemars Piguet Remaster 02. Now, this watch really has to do some work because I'm not an AP guy. There's nothing wrong with the watches. It's just that the brand positioning as kind of the next step up in the dick swinging ladder from Rolex really doesn't do anything for me. It's not something I want to buy into. But having said that, the retrofuturism of the Remaster 02, the asymmetry, the size. I'm not a fan of small watches. The 41mm for me is perfect, and I would struggle to take a watch with the original sizing of 27mm seriously. The colors, the sharpness, it's all just great. I just love the Remaster 02. People tend to call this a brutalist design, and I don't think that's accurate. Brutalism implies a rawness, a roughness, a sort of a toughness in the feeling, an egalitarian quality to the design. And there's none of that in the AP Remaster 02. This watch, yes, it is harsh. Yes, it is sharp. But it's angular and it's bold, but it is not and is never raw. It is never unfinished. It is beautiful and perfect in its execution. And that's kind of why I love it, because it is so harsh and singular of vision, whilst at the same time having that vision sort of executed with the precision of a scalpel cut. It's just gorgeous. And again, kind of like the Rolex, there's every chance that even though I'm not an AP guy, if I did manage to find the 40 odd K I need to buy this, I would have this watch in my collection. Okay, watch number 3 is the Omega Speedmaster, first Omega in space. I can keep this one pretty short. There's a reason why the Speedmaster turns up on so many people's perfect watch list. It is pretty much perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. And that's the problem. See, perfect means without flaws. And the easiest way to avoid flaws is to not take any risks. If you look at all of the watches that people put on their perfect watch lists, they are low risk, low ambition watches. The first Omega in space takes that worthy, perhaps even great design, but a little bit bland, steals it and then takes it for a spin. The dial color varying between blue and gray depending on the lights, the brush finish, the kind of domed, not boxed sapphire, the photina. All of these things are little, and don't forget the oldie-timey Omega logo. All of these things add something to the base material of the Omega Speedmaster. And I know a lot of people don't like some or all of those changes. And for that reason, the first Omega in space is not perfect. It takes some risks. Some people don't like those outcomes. And for them, this watch is flawed. But for me, this watch is not perfect. It's better than that. It's interesting. It's an interesting Speedy. And for that, I love it. Again, there was a close run second in this kind of category because I do love the first Omega in space. It really plays with the idea of the Speedmaster chronograph, as does the Omega Speedmaster Pilot. The recently released Omega Speedmaster Pilot runs a close second to the first Omega in space. I do like it, but ultimately I'd go with the first Omega. And the reason for that is really twofold. One is that I like the 3-register layout more than the 2-register. I think it adds more character, more interest, more dynamism to the dial. And secondly, I'll take a watch that's 13.5 millimeters over a watch that's greater than 15 every single day of the week. So yeah, I do love the Omega Speedmaster Pilot. It's a really good watch, but if I had to choose between that and the first Omega in space, that weird ass blue-gray photinaed 3-register watch has me every time. Okay, so the fifth watch in this little lineup is the Enoma A1. Now, like AP, micro brands have to work pretty hard to get my attention and to make me feel good. Whereas AP, it's all about its positioning and the dick swinging involved. With the Enoma, and with micro brands in general, it tends to be the whole chasing a value proposition. So many micro brands rely on providing a bang for buck substitute of the more expensive watch that you really want, that I understand a lot of people want and they feel great about that, but it leaves me feeling a little bit sad. The Enoma cuts through that because it very much stands on its own. You look at the Enoma and it doesn't remind you of anything. Like the table that it's based on, it stands alone. Coming back to that table that formed the foundation of the Enoma design, that table and all the furniture created by its designers were intended as a form of functional art. And that spirit really carries through to the Enoma. The nested asymmetry of the case and then the dial and then the markers creates this sense of flow, of movement, which really talks about which converses with the motion of time. And it's just a brilliant artistic expression of the passage of time and the physical manifestation of a watch that I really love and get into. And while that's the broad concept, as you get closer, just overall, the shapes, the finishes, the colors all work together to transport what is an interesting concept and turn it into a really pleasant and really lovely watch to look at and wear. My only concern with this watch is it's a bit small. It's a 39 millimeter watch, but because of the shape, it wears like a 37. I get that that's trendy and that's what a lot of people want today. Personally, if this had been like a 40, 41 and then worn like a 38, that would have been much better for me. And that's what I would have personally preferred. Again, there's a +1 for me in this last watch. A potential alternative to the Enoma would have been the Todano Chan B1. This watch is so different in execution, but so similar in spirit to the Enoma that it was a really close second. Ultimately, the B1 suffered for the AP Remaster 02 making the list ahead of it, whereas I felt the Enoma was more singular. So if I had to choose only one of those for my list of 5, then the Enoma made the list. But I can see a future looking forward where I end up owning both of these watches. Okay, so that's it. They're my 5-ish favorite watches of 2024. And because they're my favorites, that makes them my best watches of the year. Tell me in the comments below, what are your favorite / best watches of the year? It's not really something we can debate because it is so subjective, but I'm really fascinated to see what other people choose. And more than that, tell me why you chose that. What is it that makes that watch so special and stand out for you? Anyway, I've been Pete McConville. This is what I do. If you like it, like, subscribe, do all that stuff, and we will see each other again later.